Good morning, everybody. This is not a formal lecture. Okay, this is we call it an in conversation with. It's a chat. So I'll be talking to these three guys here, but it's very informal. So if anybody actually wants to ask a question while we're going through this, it's perfectly okay. All right. This is not something where you have to sit there quietly and wait until the end. It's about learning from these three people. Now, there's a very special reason. I'm very happy to have got the three here today. They're going to tell you about themselves, or I'm going to ask them questions, but once they get started, there'll be no stopping them, I'm quite sure. But there's a really good reason for having the three of them here. Stacey Dix, you can tell which one that is, that's the one in the middle. Stacey actually comes from out of Cornwall, never mind, but she studied at University College Falmouth and now she works in London. Tom Podkolinski also comes from out of Cornwall, but he now works and I think quite likes living in Cornwall, and I don't think there's anything in the world that'll actually get him to move out of Cornwall, but he was brought up and studied outside of Cornwall. Whereas Max was born and brought up in Cornwall, but has studied and now works out of Cornwall. So all three of them are practicing, really successful designers, but they've all reached that from there's a Cornish connection with all of them, but they've all gone completely different routes. And if any of you consider a career in design, there will be as many different routes to that career as there are people in this room who want to be designers. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to ask these guys in turn a few questions, skip a few questions, and if you've got any questions, put your hand up and we'll just break it up with your questions. Does that make sense? Yeah? Don't be frightened. It's very easy to talk from here, and I've been in your position on that side, and it's quite difficult for you to ask. I find it difficult to ask a question from the audience, but it's okay. It'll be fine. So I'm going to start. My first question. I'm going to sit down now. Oh, by the way, we're just having a little argument. This was a gift from one of our graduates from Performance Sportswear Design. Actually, two of our graduates, because they're twins. And the FFF stands for Falmouth Fashion Federation. Just in case anybody here says anything other than that, that's what it stands for. So I'm going to start with Max, our true Cornishman, studied and working abroad. Can you just give us, and I'm going to ask all three of you this, can you just briefly take us through what GCSEs you did, because most of you here are doing GCSEs, aren't you?
Don't know if I can remember.
Yeah. Well, if you can remember, and then kind of where you went, A levels, university. How did that develop?
Okay. Born and raised in St Austell, St Awful, I think it's nicknamed.
No.
I don't live there anymore, so I don't know. Born and raised in St Austell. I moved to Lincolnshire to study GCSEs. My dad was in the Air Force, so that's why we moved out of Cornwall, much to my annoyance, and I became quite an upset child and moved school a couple of times, but found a very good design and technology school science and technology school in Lincolnshire, and studied, so I had a real kind of, there was a support there for studying design and the sciences, and so apart from the standard GCSE subjects, I also chose to study design and realization. I studied sports studies, whatever the kind of the PE course was called.
Sports science?
It was sports science, yeah. PE.
PE.
Physical education.
Yeah.
And geography and art and a mixture of others. I think did 10 in those days, and then stayed at the same school to study A levels. And for A levels, I did 3, and I chose to study design and technology, art and design, and sport science. Those are my 3 A levels. And from that, I went to another college, moved to Buckinghamshire, to High Wycombe, and did an art and design foundation course. At that stage, I already knew that I wanted to kind of follow the art and design route, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be, whether I wanted to be a furniture designer or a product designer or a graphic designer or a fashion designer or an artist or a photographer or a painter. I didn't know, but the foundation course was really crucial, I suppose, in my realization that furniture and product design is the route that I wanted to take. And that's just a 1-year course. They call it a foundation course for a very good reason, and that's because it gives you that fantastic kind of platform for understanding where you want to be, and you try a bit of everything. And then I went to university in Newcastle and studied furniture design, and now I'm a furniture designer.
Okay, that's great. Stacey?
I grew up in Gloucester, so it was still the West Country, so it's not too far away. And I went to an all-girls school for about 7-8 years, which was quite an academic school, and it was very much focused on science, maths, core subjects, and I took 12 GCSEs because I wanted to do fine art, product design, that on top of the core subjects, and I chose to study the 3 separate sciences and geography as well as that, and then I did Spanish, which I wasn't very good at, but I was concentrating on the creative subjects. So after that I always loved to do science and art and geography. Those were the main things for me, because it combined my love of nature and creativity. So I decided to take 5 AS levels, which I then went down to 4 A levels. So I did chemistry, geography, fine art, product design, and general studies. And halfway through doing my AS levels and A levels, I had 2 different kind of routes that I wanted to take. I either wanted to do product design that was kind of going down the route of sustainable design, or I wanted to do architecture, and architecture was a very long course, and you needed maths and you needed physics and everything like that, and obviously I didn't have that. So when I was applying to universities, I actually used my options to kind of apply for both of them. So I was applying for architecture in Nottingham, and then I applied for product design in Falmouth and Plymouth. And it just so happens that I chose Falmouth, and this was the route that I took. So I started here in 2004 and did my degree. I specialised in user-centred design for children, like toy design, furniture design, worked with quite a lot of the primary schools around here, and then I moved to London and I've started a new course. But anyway,
Okay, well, we'll get everybody up to the same place. So, whoops, Tom.
So embarrassing.
I was born and raised in Salisbury, which I don't know if any of you know Salisbury, but that's in the middle of Wiltshire, again a kind of a West Country county, not far from Cornwall. And during school, especially secondary school, I went to an all-boys grammar school, which is again quite academically orientated. I wasn't that academic myself, in the sense I wasn't actually that good at school, but the one thing that I found that I was good at or really, really enjoyed was rugby and sport in general. So actually when it came to my GCSEs, I did, along with all the maths and the English, I did separate sciences, but I also did geography, art and design technology. I was quite kind of designery, creatively inclined, but that was just something that out of all the academic subjects I did the kind of the best. When it came to choosing my A levels, well, by the time I was doing my GCSEs, I was playing for Bath, which is a Premiership rugby side, so I was kind of part of the academy scheme, as well as starting to represent the kind of the national rugby sides and touring with some of the top sort of regional sort of county divisions, which is how they kind of break it up sort of geographically, the rugby teams. And so when it came to picking my A levels, I actually just picked the subjects that were going to support my rugby career, and so I looked at all the universities that had the best rugby teams, like who had won a European Championship, who had won this, and they all seemed to be quite science orientated, and so I decided to actually do biology, chemistry, physics for my A levels, which I figured would get me into university where I could play rugby at the highest level. Interestingly, my mum, because art had actually been my best GCSE, I got my best score for it, even though I wasn't particularly interested in it. I was quite technically good, and my mum made me do an art A-level as well. So I picked the 3 sciences, and then my mum said, well, you're not giving up art, so you're going to do that as well. So during the course of my A-levels, I did that, carried on playing rugby, and then my gap year was going to be spent, I got a place on a rugby scholarship to Swansea University, which had just won the European University Championship, so they were the best university rugby team in Europe. I got a place to read marine biology whilst playing rugby, and so my gap year was going to be spent for the first half of it playing rugby at sort of like a semi-pro level for the first team, and then the second half of it doing a marine biology coral reef research in Tanzania. But my first game for the season, I had like a really bad shoulder injury in which my collarbone came off the top of my shoulder and out through my back. Amazingly,
that level of detail.
Amazingly, I didn't actually break the collarbone, which was the freakiest thing. Normally your collarbone breaks, but I managed to rip all the ligaments attaching my collarbone to my shoulder, which is why it came out. So I had like then a year of physio and surgery where I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or do anything. And again, my mum came up trumps and suggested that I did an art foundation at the local college because I wasn't able to go anywhere. I still had my art A level, so I still had a portfolio of sorts. And I did that art foundation, and as we touched on, it was an amazing year of exploring and trying everything. And whereas my art had been kind of quite focused in terms of its teaching at school, the art foundation allowed me to, like I said, try everything. And I found I had a real passion and aptitude for it. And so at the end of it, I cancelled my place at Swansea, playing rugby on the rugby scholarship and what have you, and decided to study fashion design instead in London. And it was through that I got my fashion degree, started a clothing company with friends, and moved down to Cornwall as soon as possible.
That brings everybody up to the same space. I'm just curious, is everybody aware of Art and Design Foundation as a course, as a 1-year course? No? Okay, well maybe that's something that we could kind of talk about, because you've got some really, really good foundation courses in Cornwall. Obviously there's Falmouth, but there's also Truro College and Cornwall College, all running art and design foundation courses. And if you're not quite sure what area of art and design you might like to go into, or even whether you're not sure whether you want to go into that, actually to spend a year on a foundation course, I think everybody would agree, is just a really, really good, useful year.
Actually, quite a lot of the universities, well, at least in my day, it was a requirement to have done an art and design foundation course. It might not be now, I'm not too sure, but
it's not so much a requirement, but it's certainly useful because people are much more focused about what it is,
and have kind of developed a very specialised portfolio. Yeah.
So can we do a very quick one then with each of you? What was the actual subject that you studied? Because I think that's quite interesting in terms of when we talk about what you're doing now. So
at university.
At university, you did furniture?
It was called Three-Dimensional Design, Furniture and Interiors, Jewellery and Fine Product.
That's a catchy number, isn't
that
it?
Is, yeah.
Really
that's what
name.
attracted me. You know. It was like, I can do everything again. That's great. No, it was just very, very broad course. And it was a 3-year course, and the first 2 years were very general, but you could already, by the end of the second year, you were already focusing on a particular area. And in my final year, I just focused on furniture.
Fantastic. Stacey?
Well, obviously I studied here, and I took the 3D Design for Sustainability BA, which was renamed halfway through. I think it was Sustainable 3D Design or
okay,
product
the
design,
sustainable
like that.
design.
Yeah, so it's
three-dimensional.
evolved. Yeah.
And Tom ended up doing fashion, which is
fashion design. That was it. That was the name of it. At Kingston, which was at the time, probably still is, one of the top sort of fashion colleges in London.
fantastic. Well, then carry on with you, Tom. Then from university, let's move on to your first job.
My first job, so finished fashion design, and I had an interesting 3 years at university. Interestingly, I actually failed my university course, which incidentally I completed this year. So I graduated this year.
Okay, big-handed reply.
Yeah.
So how long did your degree take you, Tom?
11 years.
You know, it may not be a record, but that's pretty
It's
good.
close. But interestingly, during the course of university, by the end of university, I'd got real momentum up. I kind of screwed up university in the first 2 years, and then the third year, I had to really work out what it was that I wanted to do, which took a bit of time, which meant I wasn't able to focus on completely getting the marks. And that set me back, but actually by the time I finished university, I was very clear, which interestingly, a lot of people that got much better grades weren't that clear still. They'd kind of gone through university sort of doing what was set to them, whereas I'd managed to kind of work out what I wanted to do and get that working. So I knew that I didn't want to work for anybody, that I wanted to be working kind of on my own terms. I knew that sort of I'd been able to bring in my passion for sport, and I loved designing technical things, especially when the outdoors were involved, because there was a kind of a futuristic element there where you were dealing with technology and things that were constantly evolving to perform better. And I liked that progressiveness of the design in the sense that it wasn't style-led, it wasn't fashion-led, so that what I was doing one year was the foundation for what I was going to do the next year. And so I very fortunately met a character who just started a surf company, and he'd been doing it for a year. And we got talking, and he needed a designer on board, and I was up for kind of building a company pretty much from scratch. Like I said, he started for a year, but there was no meat on any bones yet. It was just almost an idea still. And so we got another guy who was into marketing, and the three of us decided to build this cold water surf brand, or this. It kind of moved into the outdoor clothing market as well, but primarily it was a cold water surf brand. And so I spent a year living in London building the company whilst I was doing a number of other part-time jobs to fund, because I didn't get paid for the first year of building a company because we didn't actually have any money. All of the money was going into actually getting something started. So I worked I think my actual first job was Pizza Express or something like that, Pizza Express, and then Lang & Hunter, a couple of bars, but anything just to keep the money going. But after the first year, finally got to a point where we could afford to start paying ourselves, and as soon as that was the case, I moved straight down to Cornwall, and we set up sort of like an office. Well, it was still in our bedrooms for the first bit, but then we set up an office in St Agnes, and it's still there 8 years later basically. So that was my first job.
Finisterre, are people aware of Finisterre, the clothing brand? No? No? Right, okay. Really, really successful Cornish clothing brand right here in our midst, well, on the north coast.
Yeah, on the north coast, yeah.
But really with a major world reputation for being, like a really, really cool brand. Won awards for sustainability.
Design, Volvo Design Award, Observer Ethical Award, RSPCA Good Business Award, and a lot of other kind of good business practice, environmental and design basically.
I think sometimes we've got some really amazing things in Cornwall, and we're good at telling the rest of the world about them, but we kind of forget to tell Cornwall about them. So it's
very good customer services as well. I'm a customer. And very good customer services.
I mean, it's one of the things we worked really hard on.
Well, you might as well carry on, and we'll come to Stacey afterwards. So tell us about your first.
Me?
Yeah.
My first job.
Max.
Graduated from my long titled degree, and in Newcastle that was, and there was a big exhibition called New Designers at the Business Design Centre in London, and it's a group exhibition. Design universities from all over the country take their graduates and put on a huge big exhibition. Falmouth are there.
Yeah, actually, can I just stop you? Design Technology Tutors, I'm sure you're all aware of New Designers, which is on week 1 now, and then next week it's split into 2 weeks. Is there ever a possibility of doing a London trip as part? Is that kind of out of the question these days? No. Because it really would be an awesome trip to take the students on if you wanted any help in organising it at that end.
I actually visited New Designers. I was quite lucky that my sister was 3 years older than I was, and so before I had gone to university, my sister had already finished university, and she was a jeweller. And so when I was looking at universities to apply, when I was doing my Art and Design Foundation course, at that stage I started going to new designers, and it actually really helped me to kind of understand. You can just see what the students of that year had produced and what the direction of the school. It wasn't reading a prospectus and trying to figure out what they do. You actually go and you see the product, see the work that's being created and communicated by, recent graduates. And it was a really fantastic way of for me to kind of understand which course was the most appealing and would cater for my needs and wants. So that's why I chose to go to Northumbria.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So when I then 3 years down the line I graduated, I actually was there standing at New Designers with my graduation projects in front of me, and I received 2 job offers, surprisingly, and one in Johannesburg and one in London. And I didn't actually want a job. No.
That's honest.
It's not that I didn't want a job. I didn't expect to get a job, is the truth. And so I was a bit of a pessimist, or a realist at least, and I knew the statistics of graduating from a design degree and the chances of getting a job in that field, or in that exact field. And so I had already applied to do a snowboard instructor's course in Fernie in Canada. I wanted to have at least a backup plan, something else, and so I'd already planned to do that. So on that first day when somebody came round and offered me a job, actually this guy called Uber Holiodin, he's from Thailand and had a design studio in London. He was a judge on one of the awards and said, what are your plans after graduating? And I said, I'm going to go to Canada. He said, so you don't want to work in design? And I said, well, I don't know, I just don't expect I'm going to get a job. And he said, well, would you like a job? And I was like, okay, maybe. And he said, come to my studio, to his office that following day, which I did. So I actually missed the morning of the following day of New Designers, and he offered me a job working in his design studio. He was an interior designer, but also designed bespoke pieces of furniture for the jobs that he was working on, restaurants, private houses and apartments, offices, and I started like 4 weeks later.
Fantastic. And Stacey?
Well, it's slightly different for me. For the majority of the time I was in university, I was specialising in design for children, and my final project was a renewable energy toy that taught children from ages about 5 to, I think 5-8 to 8-9, how to understand about renewable energy through play. So it was very much focused on learning through play and education, and I incorporated science within my toys, so I kind of got the design and science element in there. And halfway through the year, I looked to see if there was any kind of student competitions or briefs that were put online that I could submit all of my work to. And there's a competition called DesignEd, which is Design and Art Directions Awards. And Hamleys had sponsored a brief that was asking to design an imaginative play tool or toy. So I submitted it, waited probably about 4 or 5 months, didn't really know what was going on, had my final degree show. I was told that my designs had been shortlisted for the event in London, so I then organised to go up to London, and it was held in Old Billingsgate Market. All of the other students were there, so you kind of got a feel for what everyone else was doing and what other designs had been submitted to the other briefs. I met the CEO of Hamleys, and we were all on a table together just talking about our toy designs, probably for about 3 or 4 hours. And then, luckily enough, I got a DesignEd yellow pencil and won an award. And then I came back down to Cornwall. I had an email from the office manager saying the CEO would like to see you again. So then I trekked back up to London, showed my portfolio. At this point, I didn't realise there was a job or anything. It was just, we're interested in what project you submitted. So I was talking through it. And then I went back to Cornwall. And then I had another email that I then trekked back up. And I was like, I don't really know what's going on. And then they said, we would like to offer you a 6-month internship to be our first toy designer. So the first 6 months I was kind of learning a little bit about toy design in industry, working with their buying and merchandising team, and it just developed into a full-time role, and I've been there ever since. So just product and toy designer at the moment.
Well, fantastic. So we've gone from these guys when they were pretty much your age to when they started work. Do you want anybody got any questions at this stage? Because I'm going to ask some silly questions in a minute, but has anybody got any questions? That sounded like somebody was thinking about asking a question.
Yeah, clearing their throat.
Okay, no, all right, okay. All right, I like asking this question. I think I'll start with Tom. And what's the best thing about your life as it is now?
I think the best thing about my life is the...
I think as a designer, because otherwise we could spread it. All sorts of other things, couldn't we?
Well, no, I think it's the lifestyle. I love designing, and it's my passion. And in that respect, I don't see it so much as work. I just see it as something that I kind of enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis. And I kind of have managed my life so that I design along with a few other things that I really, really love doing. So one of the things I'm just hugely passionate about is surfing, which is why it's so important for me to be down in Cornwall, whatever it is that I'm doing. So if I can, like, my day-to-day, I'll be surfing, I will be designing, I will probably have a couple of meetings on the phone, a couple of people I need to talk to about some bits of design. And then next week I'm in Oxford and London and sort of jumping around. And I love the lifestyle of being able to surf in Cornwall, then be in London, say next week, then Oxford a few days later, then back in Cornwall surfing. And it just keeps life very sort of engaging and constantly changing, and sort of the routine of it is well, there's very little routine. Exactly, it's constantly having to change to what project I'm working on, which I hugely enjoy. So long as there's at least sort of surfing, a kind of or being in Cornwall at least half a week, every other week type thing.
But you started designing a surf brand. Were you a surfer when you were studying fashion at Kingston?
No, I was. My background was, my dad was an expedition GP, and so I grew up with him living in the Antarctic, or was the South Pole for a year, or like he climbing the Himalayas, and so from the age of kind of 5 or 6, I'd been camping, and then I think I was cross-country skiing the Arctic at the age of 14 with him, and so it's sort of and he used to run a ski school up in central Norway, so I loved the outdoors, and what I had was a great knowledge of outdoor clothing, a passion for sport and understanding sport, and a fashion design background. And so it just so happened that when I met Tom, his idea was surf, and I thought, do you know what, surf, that's an outdoor activity. I could totally get into that. And
you were almost programmed to
have a crack. And then sort of surfing's a really hard sport, and it took me kind of a year or two of consistently getting in every other day, getting like the proverbial crap kicked out of me by the waves. But eventually I got to the point where actually I considered myself a surfer, and as soon as I got there, the love started to come, and I just, it's a really important part of me now.
Jump to Max.
I'm self-employed, so I'm boss.
That's the best bit.
That's the best bit. I mean, it's the same thing as Tom. I'm in charge of my routine, and there isn't really much of a routine. I'm not in total control of what I do, because I design furniture and products for people, and so those people are massively important to my business. But those people take me to really exciting places. I mean, today I'm in Cornwall, yesterday I was in London, 2 weeks ago I was in Russia, a few weeks before that I was in Turkey, a few weeks before that I was somewhere else, Milan.
Last year you came here directly from Australia, I think.
Maybe. I don't remember. Last year I was in Australia, I was in Brazil, I was in all sorts of really exciting places, and the reason I'm in those places and travelling the world is because I'm a designer, and because design has enabled me to travel and to do what I really love doing and see the world. So that has to be the best bit.
Fantastic. Stacey?
I'm just happy at the moment that I've had the opportunity to pursue a career in exactly what I really wanted to do. And I've been there for about 5 years now, and I've slowly developed a confidence in my own ideas, and I think it's really important as a designer to really believe in your ideas, because it's really difficult to sell an idea to someone if you don't really believe in it yourself. And you really do have to have the love for what you do. But recently I've started a new course in London, Central St Martin's, which is actually called Applied Imagination. It's a Masters in Applied Imagination, which actually isn't really descriptive of what we do, and there isn't a strict structure. So you pretty much can design and research your own kind of questions or what you actually want to do. So what I love about my life at the moment is I've got working in industry, working with people with the same beliefs and same ideas and kind of general common ground of creating really great toys and really great brand designs and artwork in industry and for retail. And then I've got the other element where I'm still in academia, and I'm studying my own personal projects, because I think it is really important if you're working with a brand that you keep fresh. You keep your ideas fresh, and to do that I thought if I step away maybe for a couple of years, do my own personal projects as well, I can then feed better ideas back into the brand. So I'm kind of trying to go full circle and keep myself fresh as a designer rather than keep working on the similar projects.
I'm just going to try a very, very small summary here, because the thing that comes across from the three of you, that as designers, the greatest thing about what you're doing is you're doing what you love doing. And I think probably, I'm going to ask you in a moment what your advice is, what one piece of advice is that you're going to pass on to the students that are in here today, but so that I don't get left without being able to. My advice to all of you is that you're going to spend the rest of your life doing something, find something that you really love doing, and then it's not work. If you end up doing something that you absolutely hate or you don't even like very much, then that becomes work. And the best thing, and all the successful designers that I know actually do it because they absolutely love doing it, and they would do it really, and very often to start with, you do it without being paid for it, but eventually, if you keep working at it, you continue to build a career, and it becomes a kind of not continuous, but a very large proportion of your daily life is actually doing things that you really enjoy doing. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about what single piece of advice that you would give everybody in the room, and then after that we're going to open this up to questions. And just a word of warning to the teachers here, that if the students here haven't got any questions, I'm going to pick on teachers to ask questions.
Surely that's an incentive to the students not to.
That's a really bad way of doing it. But I did promise I wouldn't pick on any students in here. Okay, Tom, thank you for pointing that out. So you're first. What's the one piece of advice that you would give everybody?
Well, I think seconding what you said, I think I do actually remember GCSEs, or I do actually remember being a teenager and being your age, even though it was some time ago. And I think the thing to be aware of is that back then when I was your age, the future seemed like such a distant thing, so far away. And what I was concerned with was kind of like what was going on around me. It's kind of like sort of what my friends were doing, sort of like kind of what my hair was doing, which girls I fancy, sort of like surviving homework, or all those kind of things which kind of consume your mind. But the thing to really kind of like put in the back of your mind, even though it's not like an immediate priority, is that at some point at some point as you get older, you're going to start to care about what it is that you've got to do and how you're going to be doing it, basically. And for me, like I said, I kind of avoided it, but then when you're suddenly faced with, oh my God, I've got to start doing something, I've got to start earning money, I've got to start kind of like living and sort of growing up to a degree. And then I found that I cared a lot. I really, really cared, because I didn't want to kind of like have what I have to do dictated to me. And all that I'm thankful of is that when I was your age, is that I was to a degree selfish in terms of actually just doing what I really like to do. And I learned a huge amount from actually, at your age, being passionate about sport and actually just pursuing and working really hard at something that I really, really loved. And the lessons I learned, what I got out of that are at the foundations from me going on to be successful in design, in engineering, in the science areas that I now work in. But it all just started from me, like I said, at your age, not having a clue what I wanted to go on and do, but actually just having a thing that I could work on and enjoy. And so I'd ask, my advice would be, if there is something that you enjoy doing, actually say, well, do you know what? We live in a world where just enjoying and working really hard at something, that's enough to take you many, many places that you can't imagine or comprehend just yet. But if you are working hard and enjoying something, that's a great foundation for success.
Thanks, Tom. Stacey?
I would say when I was doing my GCSEs, I had a very strict plan out in front of me of kind of what I wanted to do. So I kind of was conditioned that I would do my A-levels, I would go to university, I would find a job, and then that was it. But the new course that I'm doing right now is basically teaching me to enjoy the journey or the experiences, and then always reflect on what you're doing. So you're actually learning from each milestone or what you're achieving. And it's really easy to let time just go by and not learn anything from it. And I also think that if you fail at something, it doesn't really matter, because it makes you stronger and it makes you have that more motivation to succeed in your next thing that you're doing. And my main piece of advice would be, don't see something as a shiny object. Try and take all your opportunities as like learning experiences and a learning journey, and like just keep bring everything together, do what you want to do, what you love, because I think you excel in what you love to do. So just keep going and just learning.
You excel in what you love to do. It's a great thought. And Max?
Don't fall asleep in lectures.
There's nobody falling asleep in here.
I was just then.
Oh, okay.
The whole kind of loving what you do and doing what you love is obviously kind of a recurring comment, but it is very true. What I'd like to add to that, I think, is all those things that you don't love doing, do them in a way that you love, that makes you love them, because especially when you're at school, you're studying so many subjects, you're not going to love all of them, you're not going to be good at all of them, but and I think this is something now that I can reflect on, and I can think, okay, I wish I had kind of like twisted things to my own taste, to my own likes, to my own concentration span. It's really important to find a way that you can engage with subjects that you don't necessarily like and enjoy, in a way that somehow you can I need to kind of rephrase this somehow. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I know exactly what you're trying to say.
Can you say it for me?
I can try. Even if you don't like it, find a way of dealing with it that makes it more fun.
That makes it more fun, more enjoyable, and allow you to engage with it and learn from it, I suppose, and learn that subject. Because, like, I'm self-employed. I don't employ anybody to do all the really nasty things like accounts and maths and invoice writing and even emails and writing. I mean, you have to be good at writing, you have to be good at communicating, I have to be good at making things, because I'm in my workshop a lot of the time. There is so many, and I'm solving problems all the time. So again, the maths and the engineering and understanding chemistry, even with a lot of the work that I produce, because I'm mixing materials and I'm understanding the mechanics of machinery and the the kind of the makeup of certain materials. It's all of the subjects that I was taught at school, they all play a part in what I do now, and I did not anticipate that.
Yeah, even if you hated them at the time, believe it or not, there is a value that...
Believe it or not, there is a value to those. And there's so many times now when I think, like, history, like I have meetings with people and they say, history of design especially, but even other kind of historical events, this brings me back to a certain event, and I'm like, oh no, it obviously passed me by. I obviously missed that in school, and I probably did miss that in school, and I really wish I hadn't, because it would have been really important as part of that conversation, and that conversation might have been with a potential customer or client, and I don't know, you just never know when these things are going to play a really vital part in your career and your life.
That's a really good point at which we can open it up. Spare your tutors, spare your teachers. Let's ask them. No. We're going to see if there's any of the younger people out here who've got any questions first. Okay. Is this to everybody or to anybody?
Everybody, including all the guys, everybody in here. As a teacher, because we've heard from your point of view, as a teacher, coming from I spent 10 years being a designer, went into teaching. I went into teaching because I felt really passionate, because you guys are free to do your ideas. You're completely free to have any idea you want, and it's our jobs to make it happen. And if you're not careful as you go through life, that gets taken away from you. And I think my question to you is, you've escaped that. You haven't got somebody to say, no, you can't do that. Because you're actually in that unique position to say, actually, I want to do this. And I think that's my message to you guys. At this stage, at year 9, year 10, you are still free to do what you want and tell us what you want, and it's our job to make it happen. And I think that's my important message.
Sounds like a pretty good teacher to me.
Listen to your teacher.
Anything from the floor? Anything from the stadium? Oh, there we go. Fantastic. Congratulations.
You guys obviously got to a point where you're all really happy with what you're doing, but where would you see yourself, say, maybe developing in like 5-10 years' time? Because you don't really want to just stay where you are. You want to, where would you kind of move on next? What would be what do you want to do?
Okay, that's fantastic, because I was going to ask that one and I forgot. So let's just do it as a wrap up. We'll do the three. What's your unfulfilled ambition? What do you want to? What's the biggest thing that you want to do? Is that kind of sum it up? Yeah.
I have this dream of like retiring at the age of 40, and kind of and being able to just almost be completely self-indulgent with regards to what my time is spent doing. So that means kind of like not
keep
having
it to design, Tom.
Yeah. But I think sort of the idea of kind of having the financial, sort of emotional and intellectual freedom to sort of pick what I want to do, surf what I want to surf. I'd love to surf like 15, 20 foot basically, and there's no way I'm going to do that if I don't have the time to be able to invest in the training and the practice. And that's just like a completely self-indulgent sort of, that would be a cool thing to be able to do, and that would require me travelling around the world and surfing different breaks to get the experience to get to that level. And I'd like to do that and then be able to come back and sort of just pick up a design project of my choosing and do it. So I think ultimately what I'm working towards is further freedom, constant like sort of how free can I be in terms of how I express myself and how I use my time. That's what keeps me working. Like
I'm conscious of time, Tom. So thanks for that, Stacey.
Mine would probably be very similar in the sense that the course that I'm doing now is just basically teaching me to just run with my ideas. So I'm hoping that in 5 or 10 years' time I still have that flexibility to do what I want. I'm also at the moment working on writing short stories, and I would love at some point to be able to be in a position where I can launch the books and the stories under like my name, and maybe grow something under my name rather than maybe a different brand, but also working with that brand as well.
So the experience that you're getting at Hamleys and the continuing education that you're doing will eventually, hopefully, make brand Stacey Dix.
Yeah, but Ideally, yes, but then again, I don't really know what's going to happen, and I'm quite happy where I am now, and I'm learning from what I'm doing. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. Max.
I really like what I do now, and I've been running my own business for 5 years now, and in that time I have friends, colleagues of mine, contemporaries, who went through a very similar route to me, who are now doing very similar things to me in that they're running their own business, but they're already kind of progressing to the stage and growing as a company. So they're not just a one-man band, as I still am. They are employing people. They've got bigger studios. They're growing as a brand, and I guess that's what growth is all about. And I don't even really take interns, offer internships, and people ask me all the time if they can come and work for me for free, but for some reason I always turn them down, and there is a reason for that, and it's because at the moment I'm sort of in control of what I do, and I'm very, very flexible. The smaller I stay, the more flexible I stay, and that flexibility is really important to me. And so although perhaps I should be aspiring to grow my business and employ people and have a big office, I actually don't want to. I'd like to stay independent and small, and hopefully there are enough people out there who like what I do and believe in what I do to sustain that and to keep me in business, and but without being kind of forced to grow in order to make what I do more kind of economically viable. So I want to grow and mature, but I don't want to expand as such.
Sounds perfectly reasonable and eminently sensible. I'm conscious of the time. It's 11:05. I think some of you have got buses coming, so I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I'd just like to, this is not a plug for University College Falmouth. It's simply a statement that University College Falmouth is, the name will be changing, or there is an application going in to change our name or change our status to become Falmouth the Arts University Cornwall, which means it will be the only university that's actually domiciled, that's based in Cornwall. But very importantly, it is Cornwall's university, which means it's your university. So for your teachers and for all of you, this is a resource. This is a place that you can come to. You can come here, look at exhibitions, particularly come and look at the degree shows, but we can organise other things. We can organise lectures and visits for you, so that you can use Falmouth as a benchmark. You can look at this university and then you can compare other universities to Falmouth and use Falmouth to help you make your decisions about what you want to do with your future. So would you just join me in saying thank you very much to our three fabulous players?